what drives that as much as anything is the cost of publishing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the other issue that you just brushed over was copyright.
Right.
Who owns the copyright?
Uh-huh.
And that's where there's a lot of discussion in open access that has to do with copyright and who owns it and can we share that. And as a managing editor for the Southern Quarterly, when we ask for an author's agreement, it's understood that the author retains copyright, but if a publisher contacts me about an article, then the journal receives a royalty. And that seems to be a nice balance. And there are some things like poetry and photography that we don't hold, try to even control. But there's that option that I don't think every publisher is amenable to. But the whole point is to get the information out, and the more it disseminates, then I think that's where those kind of issues come out. But my concern right now is the cost of publishing. And
I'm going to name the publisher. I believe you're referring to Elsevier. Well, in the midst of everyone's trials and tribulations, Elsevier's made a profit on average of 35% year over year for the last 5 to 10 years. And we typically, the libraries pay for that. So it's a huge issue for us, keeping up with inflation and so on. We're constantly cutting and so on. And then they come out with all their interesting packages, which is another sort of quirk. And you have to decide whether you want to go with an individual title or a package and what's the best deal. And so we've been going through all these negotiations with Elsevier as a Mississippi sort of library directors consortium recently. But yeah, it's a huge amount. And what we're talking about annual costs of $400,000 to $500,000 just for the titles that we selected. And with that kind of, we get this wonderful deal of only 5% inflation a year if we can do it for 5 years. Well, that's fabulous, but it still means that what starts at $448,000 this year is $556,000 in 5 years. It's an enormous increase when we're facing decreases. So it's a huge issue. But then I want to throw this right back at the faculty because who writes all the articles? It's our faculty that writes the articles. Then you give up the copyright, you give your work free to Elsevier, they turn around and they charge these exorbitant amounts to the libraries to be able to share your work. So, more for us, if you just continue this sort of cycle. I mean, basically you give it away and then we pay through the nose for it. So, I think there's this really huge shift coming, and it started with some of the major universities already of open access, where, they're really encouraging faculty to recognize you don't have to give up copyright. You can keep copyright and still be published. I mean, this is a big con game that's gone on for a long time, but it doesn't have to continue, and I think there is going to be a big change in the next probably 5 to 10 years. And I don't know where that puts the publishers.
Well, that's a good question. And it also, so much of it does vary from the sciences to the humanities. There is a very big difference between the kind of books that we publish, a scholarly monograph, and a physics journal, for example. The question of copyright is a vexed one, and every university press, at least, for example, we're almost arguing with ourselves sometimes because we're staunch believers in the doctrine of fair use and encourage our authors, don't go out there asking permission every time you want to write down the word "the" from somebody who has decided to copyright it. There is such a thing as scholarly fair use. But at the same time, we don't want people simply stealing the works that we have published or that our authors have spent much of their career writing, which of course happens all the time. Electronically, we have found PDFs of our books showing up in all sorts of interesting places. And it's listed not as, books stolen from this press. It's listed as open access. But it's open access to published volumes from, 100 different university presses maybe on a particular website. And so I don't know, I guess, I don't know what the answer is to some of these questions. I don't know that we will know for some time. There's lots of stopgap measures that you can take in both directions. I mean, I know with some of the things that are not answers, which is what you described for Southern Quarterly makes a tremendous amount of sense. The author gives you the first serial rights, and if someone contacts you for permission, then you can deal with that. But then the author can take that article, and he or she can publish it elsewhere, or publish it as part of a book, or whatever. Our contract has certain stipulations in it that we want the authors to agree to. Every publisher in the world does that. But at the same time, if the goal is to disseminate information, then you have to figure out what's the best way to do that. And stay in business.
I just want to bring up a few points that are kind of near and dear to my heart as a publishee as opposed to a publisher, about, because it seemed to me that some of the nub of the question had to do with this, the whole idea of your work being thrown open for a debate and out there, everybody weighing in and stuff like that before you publish it and when do you publish it. The expert readers that you guys assign to monographs and of course to journal articles as well are kind of the gatekeepers to academia, and I think that's an important job and one you got to get the right gatekeepers on, and usually academic university presses are just great at getting the right gatekeepers. As I've been assigned to be a gatekeeper before to review journal articles and review publications, and doggone it, that takes a lot of time to really review a serious manuscript, whether it's a 30-page journal article or a 300-page book manuscript. To do it right takes an awful long time. And to expect that you're going to kind of have an online discussion about this publication, and then the right people are going to show up to discuss it. The proper gatekeepers, well, if you do that with too many publications, the gatekeepers are going to wind up being overwhelmed. I mean, I'm only going to accept a couple manuscripts per year to look at, because I want to look online. So when do you begin to overwhelm people too much? And also in a field like I work in, the study of Vietnam, it's a very argumentative field. If you get the wrong gatekeeper, he's just going to hate your work. This guy is a communist or a Nazi or whatever, and just attempt to debunk it. That's his review. He's going to tell you how big an idiot you are. And if you get the wrong gatekeeper, then it's really difficult to be seen in the right way. And so I think throwing the argument open is a good idea, but I think it's really got to be streamlined and carefully done. And last but not least, I think eventually your argument's got to be done. You got to put a period at the end of it, and so somebody else can move on and do the next book based on that topic or whatever. If it just keeps going on and on, I'm not sure that does feel much good. So I really do like the idea of people weighing in that perhaps wouldn't weigh in otherwise. But I also like that idea of known gatekeepers, once you're really truly the experts in the field, and knowing that they have the time to really take your manuscript seriously and have a lot of time to spend with it. I'm not sure. Can you do both? I guess that's my question that I'll throw back to you. Can both things, quality and this other idea, be done at the same time? I don't know.
All these innovations, the thing that we're finding as a publisher is that there is some combination of both, just as in our revenues now, 89% printed book, 11% digital and or electronic. And the real challenge that we have ahead is that dexterity of managing those two dials for the remainder of our careers as publishers, because one of the dials is just by the ways in which we watch its revenue growing and sales year over year growing. That dial's amplitude is going to change. We're going to have to know how to, but at the same time, this is the one that's really been paying all the bills. So in the case of what you present there, it is somewhat the same dexterity that's going to be required. Can you build a tribe of people who are interested in this book early by having them talk about the book? And then can you sort through to which tribe members need to be those chieftains? become a skill that we have either that or.
Let me ask the publishers. So I do think that the humanities monograph is less challenged than a science journal article because, you know, the immediacy of seeing science articles online, and also, of course, there's the new act, which I can't remember the name of it, federal, where they're trying to expand the all federal funded research is being published within 6 months, which will still probably be primarily, you know, as science and technology, but still. And I forgot my sort of initial thing. But so humanities monographs. I mean, at one time, I guess it's always hardback, and then you started bringing out paperback. So is like just publishing it electronically, is it not just another format, another shape of publishing? So you'd always have your hardback, your softback, your digital sort of coming in a certain sequence?
I think yes is the basic answer to that. And certainly, at least where we are now, probably where most university presses will be in the next several years. We're to a place now for the last year where we publish every book that we have rights to simultaneously as a print and an electronic version. You know, so no delay. You know, based on some of the feedback we were hearing from libraries, you know, purchasing is done, you know, at the time a work is published, and, you know, 6 months later, libraries aren't going to be going back and say, oh, was there an electronic version of this? You know, you make the decision and you move on. So we wanted to be able to capture that. I think the numbers, probably, you know, the ratios of how many copies of which version are what are changing, and we spend a lot of time talking about print runs now. That about last year, 40% of the books we published went directly to digital printed editions. Now, we still aren't to a place, though I have heard some publishers are, where you're literally printing, you know, one at a time from the very beginning. You know, we will still print, you know, an initial run of, you know, 300, 400 copies of something, and then the trick, once those run out, we're really planning for a 12-month inventory, and then of hardcovers. Sorry, mostly for the benefit of the libraries who were smartly buying the cheaper paperback editions of the book. Though I will say the press, I don't think we had as much price disparity between hardback and cloth as some. But so for the great majority of our books, hardback first, simultaneous with electronic, and then you know, after 12 months, we sort of reassess depending on if, for some reason, there still appears to be a strong market for the cloth book. You know, we won't change something that's working, but at that point, the book may go more into a maintenance mode of print-on-demand paperback at that point. But again, getting those initial print runs is the, you know, if we had a crystal ball, we'd all be a lot happier, you know, presses. I went to a very, in some ways, shocking session over the summer at our Association of American University Presses, talking about the financials, how presses are changing the margin formula, that every publisher, you know, when they're considering a project, they do one of these calculations, basically to say, can we afford to publish this book? And the ways in which publishers are calculating those is changing pretty rapidly. And in terms of what time periods publishers intend to recoup revenue from a book end, everything is getting very compressed. One thing that, and Steve can talk about this in terms of what the changes we've seen in library sales, and I think off a cliff is the word he has used, in that after initial sales, particularly of academic monographs, often, you know, after a 3 to 6 month period, there really is no movement. And partly my sense is that's due to the changing buying patterns of some of the library wholesalers.
Exactly, and one of the major ones has purchased the other one, and the Yankee Book Peddler bought out Blackwell. And so now that's pretty close to monopoly. I mean, there are other library jobbers that will serve, but I'm sure that many libraries who were relying on Blackwell to bring them what they needed are, you know, they're now YBP customers. So instead of a monograph coming out and then showing for many months a sort of long tail tapering of 12, 7, 6, so that you could rely on sales for almost 12 months afterwards. It's now 4 months of outflow and then bam, down to 1, if that. And that's that makes your planning very different. It also makes you very, very glad that you've already embraced digital printing technology, because then you can manage a print run that's suddenly there and gone. And I wanted to add, you asked about pressures on the humanities monograph. There is pricing pressure on that humanities monograph. It's caught between a rock and a hard place in many, many ways, because while we're not publishing a journal about botany or physics, the pressures you're feeling as a library are sapping up resources to the extent that we have to decide, well, should we forever stay low on our pricing, or should we just go ahead and throw in all the chips and just say, well, everybody's being mercenary about this and raise that price? Do you see what I mean? And we know that some monograph decisions at libraries are being set aside. So, well, we just can't afford that because we have to get this package from Taylor and Francis. So none of these anymore last. So it is affected, not in a direct way, but certainly in an indirect way, I think.
Total, I mean, very